I'm happy to be back on Titancast, your home for Sega Saturn news, commentary, personal stories, and more. So yeah, that's all I got.
16 million colors. Wreak some havoc in your head.
Hello there, and welcome to tonight's rather special Titancast. It's a 15th anniversary Saturn Junkyard special, and we have all of our major contributors here. So I'm going to introduce them one by one. We have from the Seattle, Washington district of the United States, Mr. Virtuous Schlub himself, Brian. Brian, hello there.
Hey, how's it going, Simon?
Yeah, good to good. Strange to be in the driving seat, but hey, let's get going. We have from the frozen north, Canada. We have Cameron. Is it Ontario, Cam?
Yeah, it is. It's Ontario.
Oh, thank goodness I didn't make a mistake there. Good. So, so hello from Cam. We've got Nuno all the way from, I think, sunny Portugal. Would I be right in saying that, Nuno?
Yes, you would be. What is up, my friends?
Good to see you. And we have the Southern Sega gentleman himself, Samuel Miles, joining us from Louisiana in the United States.
That is affirmative, yes, sir. Good, great state of Louisiana.
Excellent. And we have a rather special guest with us for this anniversary cast, and that's my good friend from many, many years ago, from the original days of the Saturn Junkyard. That's Mr. Blonde John himself, John Lee.
Evening all, pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I can't believe it's only been 15 years, but also that it's been 15 years.
Yep. So we're feeling quite an achievement here tonight. So basically this cast today is just looking back on the history of the Saturn Junkyard. And that goes back obviously 15 years, something I'm quite proud of. But we also are going to be talking tonight about the more recent history, the last sort of 4 years since 2017 when the Junkyard had its renaissance. So without any further ado, I guess we'll get down to what we've all been playing recently, which is how we usually start these things off. And then we'll go on to the subject of the cast a little later. So I'm going to start with me, and then I'm going to work through you in the same order I introduce you, if that's okay, guys. So what have I been playing recently? GTA, GTA, and GTA. I've played GTA 4. Then I played The Lost and the Damned, which is the beta download bit of GTA 4. And I also played The Ballad of Gay Tony, which is the other downloadable extension of GTA 4. And right now, I am absolutely loving playing GTA 5. Not online, story missions only. That's what I've been playing on my PS4. On my Saturn, I've had a few new games, new to me anyway, which I got at the Retro Fair. So I've been playing some Valora Valley Golf, which obviously is a favourite of mine that John gave me some time ago. I got a Japanese copy of that when I was at the Retro Fair. And I also picked up, while I was at the Retro Fair, for my Dreamcast, Intrepid Izzy. So I've been flirting around with a little bit of Intrepid Izzy, which is I think it's a 2020 game for the Dreamcast. And it's a nice little platformer. Really, really quite nice package, quite nice game. So yeah, that's me really. That's what I've been playing. That's what has been occupying my gaming time recently. So I'll move on to you next, Brian. What have you been playing?
And also to piggyback on the Intrepid Izzy thing, I would just want to give a shout out to Lewis's review on the Dreamcast Junkyard. He had a really thorough and insightful review on Intrepid Izzy that he wrote a few months ago. So highly recommend that. There's it's kind of cool to see all of the indie scene around the Dreamcast continue to I don't know, sustain itself the way it has. But as far as me, I have not been playing a ton of classic games. I think most of my time has been in Halo Infinite. Actually, recently I've been just playing the campaign since it came out a couple of days ago as we record this, and Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty impressed with it, actually. I have not been a fan of most of the Halo campaigns since the original. And I think Infinite does the thing that I really liked about the first game, where it actually surprises you routinely. And there's a lot of situations where you can have your best laid out plans and your perfect weapons ready to go into an encounter, and then shit will just hit the fan, and it forces you to improvise, and chaos just breaks out, and enemies don't do what you expected, and your fellow Marines don't do what you expected, and so yeah, it's a dynamic, and kind of there's a magic to that I really missed from the series for a very long time, that I really do think it's I don't know, kind of a nice return to form. I've also been playing Forza 5, which is a blast. It's like all the other Forza games if you've played those, but I don't know, something about that open world, just arcade racing formula that I think really carries the torch from some of the arcade racing sensibilities that I grew up with and love so much over the years. Otherwise, I haven't really played any Saturn games, but I was in Arizona for a work retreat last weekend, and I actually got to see Patrick from the Shiro podcast and website, and their whole I don't know, multimedia operation over there. And it was pretty cool. We just hung out and went to a few game stores around town. I got to see some of his setup. He has like a Astro City cab with the FPGA was it Mister emulator, so for playing some SNK beat 'em ups and whatnot. And then he has his Saturn kiosk with the Sonic. I don't know if it came out around like Sonic 3D Blast. It seems to be that art style, but it's just a Sega Saturn kiosk that he has set up, and some other like just really cool things like that I could never fit in my apartment. So I'm glad he's able to, and we're able to
He
play
has
that.
these in his home.
Yeah. He
Wow.
has. Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
But yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that. How about you, Cam? What have you been playing recently?
I went to play my Saturn the other day. I've been getting into the whole Christmas spirit and stuff like that. So usually around December, I start getting into like retro gaming, like really heavily. And the Saturn's one of my favorite things to kind of play around this time of the year. So I was setting up my CRT, getting my Trinitron all like ready, and I went to turn on my Saturn, and all my saves were gone because my battery was dead. So I was like, well, I guess I get to start all my games over again, which, that's fine. So I started with pinball, and then I moved over to Marvel Superheroes. I thought I'd play some games that were just like arcadey and jump in, jump out kind of stuff for now, and maybe within the next week or two start something maybe full, like Shining Force 3 or something.
Cool. Have you been hitting the Switch much?
I don't own a Switch. The last video game console I bought was the Wii U, and I still play that actively. There's still games on the eShop that I don't have. There's still stuff I haven't done in Xenoblade Chronicles X or in Monster Hunter Tri. So I still have a lot I can do on Wii U.
Right.
Before I think about moving on.
I thought you were a Switch man. I apologize for that.
Okay, I have nothing
so
against the Switch. I think it's great, but I just haven't moved on yet.
I have one which I rarely or barely play. But anyway, Nuno, how are you? What have you been playing, sir?
I am very good, thank you for asking. And I've been playing some new versions of old games. You know that you're getting older when you spend more time playing old games from your early teens instead of new games. I first started playing Diablo 2 Resurrected, which I already talked about a long time ago. Back when I got the chance to try it out in the beta testing. But since then, the final game came out in early November, I think. And so I was playing that, and I basically maintain everything that I said back when I first tried it. It's absolutely amazing. It's everything that I, as a huge fan of Diablo 2, wished for. Can't speak for everyone else. Maybe some people don't like it. I think it does some things wrong. Not me. I really, really love it. It's exactly what I wanted it to be. The other games that I've been playing lately, it's funny that Simon mentioned playing GTA because I've also been playing GTA, but not GTA 4. I already played every mainline GTA game and some of the spin-offs to boot. But I've been playing the definitive editions, which, if you've been following like current gaming news, you know that there were a lot of issues with that. They were rushed ports. They were half-assed, lazy ports with a lot of issues.
Can I ask, do you know, they were ports and not like reskins or anything like that? What was the deal with it? What was the controversy with it as well?
Yeah, so basically, they're running on a new engine. They're running on Unreal Engine 4. So you get stuff like a lighting system, shadows that are like part of the tools of the new engine and are like applied globally to the games and make a pretty big difference. Let me say that, because the old games, they had a really they weren't graphic powerhouses even back in the day, and I'm speaking from first-hand experience because I played all of these games. I'm talking about GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. I played all of these games back when they came out. And even back then, they were revolutionary for a lot of things. Graphics wasn't one of those things. And nowadays, they look empty, they look barren. And in my opinion, they're just not, the original versions are not a good experience in terms of graphics. And that was improved. But the actual models were like imported directly, or more or so directly into this new engine. So the textures have been upscaled, but the actual models, even though they have been kind of rounded off with more polygons, they're still, it's kind of a weird mixture between having the original assets, but having new textures and a new lighting system, new special effects. So it kind of looks like a fan-made texture pack or something like that. It's kind of a weird look. It kind of works. But that wasn't even the biggest issues for me. It was stuff like bugs, stuff like changes to the gameplay. Some things are incredibly easier, some things are harder for whatever reason. I'm talking about, for example, some mini games and some missions are very easy, but on the other hand, gunplay is harder, even though you have a new aiming system. Enemies seem to like waste you in a couple of seconds. You take so much more damage than you used to for whatever reason. But still, I've been playing them. I started with GTA 3 because I was already going to replay GTA 3 earlier in the year. I got in the mood for that. It's out of these three games, GTA 3 was the only one that I never beat back in the day. I got stuck in one of the later missions, which got really, really hard for a young teen as I was when it came out. So it was kind of unfinished business that I had with that game. And I wanted to replay it, but then I started hearing rumors of a remaster or remake or whatever, and I thought, well, I might as well just wait some months and try that out. And I got to play it, and still, despite all of the issues, all of the bugs, all of the dubious changes and improvements, it still has quality of life stuff added that really makes a difference, I think. And I still liked playing these remasters with the issues that they had over just playing the original version. I'm talking about something like, for example, you didn't have any kind of checkpoints. So if you were to die on a mission, you would restart from the hospital without weapons, without armor. So you had to first go to the gun shop to get weapons and armor, or go to your hideout if you had unlocked them. And then you had to go to the starting point of the mission. And then you had to try to do the mission again. It was terrible. I mean, back then I was already used to stuff on PC like Half-Life with quick saves. So not being able to save anywhere, or even at least having like an instant restart of the mission was just bullshit, and I hated that. As much as I loved the game, and I loved all of these games back then, some things about it were bullshit. One of those was the fact that you couldn't immediately restart a mission. And so just the fact that these new remasters have an instant restart, and for San Andreas, it's the only game out of the three that actually has mid-mission checkpoints. It's also the game that has the longest missions, so it kind of makes sense. Just the fact that you can restart the mission instantaneously makes a world of difference. But still, I can't praise these versions universally and say that Rockstar did a great job. It didn't. It wasn't even Rockstar that did it. It was Grove Street Games, which is the developer that handled the previous mobile ports. So this was just, I think, way over their league. They couldn't deal with such a big project like this. And Rockstar basically didn't give a fuck. It's like they just wanted a quick crash grab. So I'm kind of torn on that, because on one hand, playing these versions was a much better experience than playing the originals, which have gotten pretty dated, I have to admit. But on the other hand, I feel bad saying that you should go pay for these versions and give your money to Rockstar, because Rockstar didn't give a fuck. So, yeah, that's my opinion on these games. I ended up finishing GTA 3, and then I was just going to play GTA 3. But then I had such a great time that I decided to replay Vice City. And then I finished Vice City, and I'm now playing San Andreas. So the games that are still there, the essence of these games is still amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I absolutely love all GTA. I've played all of them except for one GBA game to their conclusion. The PSP spin-offs from Vice City and GTA 3 are also phenomenal games. I played San Andreas very recently, but hey, we're here to talk about the Saturn. So I'm going to move on briefly, to Sam, and ask you, Sam, what have you been playing? Do you have any time to play? I know you're a family man with two young kids and a hard job to do. So have you had any time to play recently?
Unfortunately, I've only been home for about 2 months this year, so I haven't really had time to do anything gaming wise. The last few weeks I have been home since Thanksgiving. Well, Thanksgiving here in the States, and I managed to play a couple of games, none of them being Saturn. In fact, I have one Saturn game I need to play very soon. That is the newly released as of yesterday, according to when we're actually recording this. So we're recording this right now on the 11th of December. Yesterday, the full English translation patch, which does also include English dubbing, English text, everything, came out for Bulk Slash, one of my favorite games of all time on the Saturn. So I will be enjoying that very, very soon. Besides that, I have only been playing basically the Metro games. Metro Exodus I played a little bit of on the PS4. Managed to get a little bit of time in with Stalker. I go back to it all the time on the PC. And played a little bit of the brand new Minecraft 1.18. I've always loved the block game. The block game is life, man. But other than that, I have had virtually no time for gaming, let alone anything else. So, as I'm sure anybody who's subscribed to my YouTube channel probably already knows. So,
I'm really excited about that Bulk Slash localization patch. Also, apparently, and I don't know how it works, but it's they updated it to work with the Saturn twin sticks as well.
yes, sir, they have twin stick support. What it was that there was a fourth or fifth control setup option that was still in the programming for the game, but it wasn't actually on the surface. It wasn't accessible to the player. So they basically hijacked that and utilized that to map out you got to understand what the twin stick does. The twin stick is not analog, it is digital. So it basically just mimics what the actual Saturn controller is doing itself. So all they had to do was try to program it to where everything functioned properly. After a little bit of beta testing, back and forth, they got it functioning. So that's why you have a whole new control scheme. And the cool thing about it is that it was a proof of concept beforehand. Now it is a reality. So there are a ton of other games on the Saturn that would probably be able to, very well use the twin stick controller. Granted, again, it's not analog; it would be digital controlling, but there again, it's another option for people to interact with these old school games. So,
yeah, that's really cool. I'm also when I download that, I think I'm going to try the Brook, what do they call it? The Wingman SD. I wrote a thing about it a while back, but it lets you just hook up modern controllers, 360, PS4, whatever, and it just converts it to Saturn. So it's like basically a digital input, but it tricks the second analog stick to mimic the face buttons. So I'm wondering if it kind of would operate a similar way in how it simulates a, the twin stick, so to speak, quote unquote, but really just the digital inputs on the face buttons.
It can, but what you got to understand is that most of the twin stick games are a very smart way to do first person games, or any game that puts you on a third person or first person perspective in the 32-bit era with the controllers we had at the time before the analog stick became so commonplace, was to utilize the shoulder buttons to turn and to utilize. Well, no, it makes more sense to, if you're thinking about where we are today with how we use first person shooters and controllers, it makes more sense for your shoulder buttons to actually rotate you, and for the actual digital pad, the D-pad, to actually act as your movement on the X-axis. So that's the difficulty there, because some games are back and forth. There was no, I think Aliens, what was it? Aliens Resurrections on the PS Alien Resurrection, excuse me, on the PS1 was the first game to utilize the modern first-person control scheme that we have all grown accustomed to whenever it comes to playing with a controller. Before then, and even after then, it was a complete crapshoot. There was no rhyme or reason. Some things worked, some things didn't. Some games gave you the option to change stuff, some games didn't. Prime example is another favorite of mine, Gun Griffin Blaze on the PS2. It has one of the most wonky-ass first-person controls in the world, and every single time I play it, it takes me 2 or 3 days to get back good at it, because they take half of what we're used to on one thumbstick and put it on the other side, and vice versa. So it's completely backwards.
Yeah. Some of those PS2 launch games were wild in how they had such different interpretations of those schemes. I mean, even like the From Software games that came out. The Eternal Ring, I think, was the first-person one, and that was just, I can't play that today. I have to play the PS4 version that lets you remap everything to another control stick. But I thought Gun Griffin Blaze, it took me a while to learn that, but man, that is such a good fucking game. I love that one. But yeah, no, I hear you. It was like kind of the Wild West in figuring out those conventions.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. John, our guest who's joining us today, has a 15-year history with the Junkyard and has been in the back sort of as a consultant, backroom consultant most of the time. And he's also been a big feature of our Facebook group ever since it came about. In fact, he was the guy who suggested it, if I remember rightly. But we'll talk all about that in a moment. John, what have you been playing recently?
Well, my name's John and I have a problem. I keep buying things that I think I'm going to play and then I don't play. I lost my gaming mojo a while back. I haven't turned my Saturn on for about 18 months. And then I got a lovely game called Kenna Bridge of Spirits on the PS5, which is absolutely stunning and without doubt the most beautiful game I've ever seen. And that reinvigorated me. I then treated myself to a Razer Kishi, which, if you don't know, is a USB-C Android game controller that slots into your phone, and the ability to sort of jump in and out of games has rekindled it. I've been playing stuff every day, Asphalt 9, Dungeon Hunter. I've even been emulating the Saturn on my phone and playing a bit of Cotton Boomerang and some Keisha 2. Radiant Silvergun and other things that I'd like to play, but it keeps crashing on. And then I also brought this little £40 arcade box from AliExpress with 3,000 games on it. And while it will happily play some Dreamcast titles, sadly, it's not quite beefy enough for a bit of Saturn. But that's what I've been up to. That's what I've been playing.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for that. And thank you, everyone, for contributing and letting us know what you've been playing recently. It's really interesting always to hear the different things that we've all been doing and getting on with. Okay, I'm gonna move on from that. I'm hosting today, so forgive me, everyone, if I'm kind of rushing through things or whatever. It's my first job hosting. A little bit nervous, but enjoying it. So yeah, I'm going to tell you the history, very brief history of the Saturn Junkyard, which is celebrating its 15th anniversary. It was actually December the 6th when I think the first article was published. So with the help of Nuno and John, we're going to skirt through the first, I guess, what would be the first 10, 11 years of the Junkyard, many of which were wilderness years. We'll get onto that in a moment. So I was, I think I got a new computer in 2005. And also, that was around the time I was becoming obsessed with the Dreamcast. I'd been given a Dreamcast, and games were extremely cheap for the Dreamcast. I think they were like 2 for £5 at the time. This is about 2005. I got really into the Dreamcast. I'd got a new computer and I was looking around for information about the Dreamcast and stuff to do with it. And I came across a blog called the Dreamcast Junkyard, which I thought was the most amazing place that I had ever visited on the internet. It just blew me away. It was reviews of games, funny reviews of games, and insightful reviews of games by a guy called Tom Lee C. Hallowed be his name, Thomas Lee Charnock. It was sort of, I guess there were podcasts at the time, but that wasn't the norm. It was blogging was the big thing at the time. Writing articles, good old-fashioned keyboard skills, sort of knocking out articles. There was bits of video and bits of photographs, but mainly it was just the written form. And Tom wrote with such humour and interesting insight about all these Dreamcast games I was discovering and enjoying. And I became absolutely enthralled and obsessed with the Dreamcast Junkyard. And eventually, after commenting on the articles and reading as many as I could, I took it upon myself to get in touch with Tom, tell him how much I enjoyed the blog. And it turned out that we both lived in Manchester, UK. We arranged to meet up and have a pint, which is what British men do. We exchanged a couple of games, and Tom very kindly agreed to let me come on board with him on the Dreamcast Junkyard. And he said if I wanted to, I could write an article about a game or a review of a game. And if it was, he didn't even say if it was any good, he just said he would put it on his blog. And I could not believe it. I felt like I was meeting one of my heroes for a start. And he was such a lovely, down-to-earth, funny, natural guy as well. But like the fact that he just gave me a break straight away was really kind and a really lovely thing to do. Anyway, I then came on board. Dreamcast Junkyard, there was 3 of us. It was me, Tom, and a guy called the Garderman, and we wrote articles, and that was great. And that lasted for probably about 6 months. And then I said, hey, Tom, I would love to try this myself. How would you feel about me doing a similar thing about the Saturn? And would it be okay if I called it the Saturn Junkyard? And once again, as is his nature, Tom was extremely generous and said, yes, I could do that. So the Saturn Junkyard was born, and initially it was just me on my blog, and I was knocking out these rather terrible articles. They're still there, I think, but I'm not suggesting you should go and find any of them because they weren't that great. It was a while ago, and I was just learning my craft as a blogger. And so they're not brilliant, but it became somewhere that if you Googled Saturn would come up, and people bit by bit came to the blog. And the first, I think, of those people before Nuno maybe, and it may be the same time, and if it wasn't, doesn't really matter, it was about the same time. The first person who ever kind of responded to the articles I was writing said that he thought they were good and that, he enjoyed them, they'd made him laugh or whatever, was my good friend John. So that's why John is here, because he was there from the start, giving me encouragement and letting me know that he enjoyed what I'd done.
Just goes to show, John, that flattery gets you everywhere.
True, it got me here, and I never speak or go online and do anything like this. So yeah. He's a wily silver-tongued old bugger.
Well, yes. So that's where John comes in. We've been friends for 15 years ever since, and then sort of
It feels so much longer.
It does feel longer, doesn't it, mate? I would imagine that I would say maybe no later than 2007, I was joined by a young teenage Nuno who was, I think, 15 when he first started. Am I right, Nuno? 15 when you first?
Yeah, 16 more probably, but yeah, it was around that age. I was a fucking kid, man.
Well, he came on as a young kid who was prepared to actually, like me, have a go at typing up a few articles, and actually knew a lot more about the Saturn than I did, if the truth were told. And so I was very happy to get some help, just as Tom had given me a sort of a lift up the ladder. I thought, let's do exactly the same. So Nuno came on board as Nebuchadnezzar, right? I think was that influenced by the Matrix? Was that something to do with the Matrix?
Yes, it was. It was Morpheus' ship.
Okay, right. So that was him, and his sort of icon was a wolf in profile.
Yeah, it's a character. Let me just interrupt real quick. It's a character from Bloody Roar, a PlayStation game, not on Saturn, unfortunately.
Okay, so I was Father Krishna, and John back in those days was Blonde John. We all had our blogger names, and that's where it sort of we went on. I think probably till about 2009, and that's where I fell off. I became not too well, and life got in the way. Whatever's. So yeah, about 2009, I kind of floated away from the junkyard, but then miraculously, some of the other contributors, Arugulas was one. Well, there was a few people that came in and kept things going, basically, at the junkyard. So as a blog, it never actually folded. It kept on. Barry, the Nomad, came on for a long time and did stuff. Barry Harmon. And it just kept ticking over. It never disappeared off the internet, which is why it's managed to get this longevity. But it kind of, I would say, stagnated till 2017 when John, again, this is where John comes into the story. I'd been to a podcast award with Tom, just got in touch with him again, been to a podcast award with Tom. He'd invited me again to write for the Dreamcast Junkyard, and I said, I might do. And I think I wrote one article and then bowed out again. But John told me, look, why don't we get the Saturn Junkyard going again? And why don't we get a Facebook going? Because the Dreamcast Junkyard, I think at this point, had a Facebook group going. So we did indeed think, yeah, we could maybe just name the group after the junkyard, get it all attached to each other, and the rest, as they say, is history. That's where the good gentlemen who are joining us this evening, Samuel, Brian, Cameron, all joined us, and we've arrived at December the 6th, 2021, still going with a podcast, a YouTube channel, a Facebook group. The original blog is still there, and we have a community, which is perhaps the thing that you can't, sort of see or touch or whatever, but we have the community, which has so many great people. And can I just, at this point, so I don't forget, he just popped into my head right now, Gaz Cormac, for example, who does all the artwork for the Facebook group, and much, much more. Amazing guy. But we have so many great people that have all come together through this project. And I thought it was very much worth a celebration in terms of the theme of this podcast, which is why we're not talking about any particular game or particular genre of Saturn games. We're just kind of bringing people who might not know the history of the yard up to speed with how it is. And we will plug each of our little parts of this operation, because we each do bits of different stuff, and some more than others in certain parts. So I'll get onto that in a minute. I hope you don't mind me rambling. I hope I didn't go on for too long. That's where we are. I'm very proud of the whole thing. Very, very grateful to the people that are here right now and all the admins and people that have helped with the Facebook group. And so, yeah, there we go. That's it. That's where we are right now. Happy birthday to us, 15 years old. I hope we can continue on into the future. And yeah, so John, can you just perhaps fill us in on, you know, where you were, how you came involved with the junkyard, and what it's meant to you over the years, or what the community means to you, and so on.
Right, okay, so I came across the Saturn Junkyard as a link through another blog by a guy called Jay, I think, Simon, yes?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Yeah, there was a link on there and a lovely picture of the personification of Father K. And I clicked on it and had started to talk to Simon from that. Essentially, I got there because Jay had posted an article on Nights into Dreams, and at that point, back in 2005, 2006, I pretty much felt like I was the only person in the universe who knew what a Sega Saturn was and how good Nights was as a game. Because all everyone else I knew had a PlayStation. Nobody in the city that I live in had a Saturn apart from me, and that got stolen in 1999 by some heroin addicts who broke into my house. So I kind of drifted away, ended up in the Dreamcast Junkyard because I was a massive part of the scene for Dreamcasts. I'll say no more than that. And then one day I was talking to Simon and mentioned the Dreamcast at the Saturn Junkyard, and I was horrified to find out that something that was so wonderful and had such a good memory for me had been left to sort of flounder, to the point where Simon couldn't even remember his passwords to log back in and start blogging again. So we got that sorted out, and I said, let's get a Facebook group going. And it was just for two people who had, unfortunately at that time, a lot of time on their hands and were feeling a bit despondent, somewhere to hang out, chinwag, talk about the Saturn and the good old days. And I remember going into the Dreamcast Junkyard and abusing my admin privileges by announcing that we'd launched the Saturn Junkyard Facebook group and posting a link and inviting people to come. And Sam was in the first wave of that, as was Cam and Brian. So, and then here we are today with all the wonderful things that we have. What I'm most grateful for with the group is that back when I was out of work, it gave me a focus, and it gave me an ability that when I did interview for the job that I'm in now, which was to support something that I wasn't familiar with on a technical level, I pointed out that I had been part of a community supporting a piece of hardware that was stopped being manufactured in the 1990s, and yet today was still being explored, exploited, and support being given to people who either had good or no knowledge. So for that I'm grateful, and because I've got, had lots of wonderful friends to talk to while I was going through some difficult times, and the group helped get me there. So there you are.
Fantastic. And I would second what John said there. It definitely helped me through some difficult times. We are men, we're notorious for not talking about our feelings and our mental health. And I think, it's good to hear that there is some hope when you're feeling a bit down, whatever you're feeling a bit unmotivated or life's getting, seeming a bit rough. There are ways out, and definitely the Junkyard was definitely that for me, as it was for John. So yeah, I second everything you say there, John. Thank you for that. Nuno, I'm going to come to you next. Can you tell us how? I mean, obviously we've touched on it a little bit, but tell us the way you became part of the the Saturn Junkyard, and how you became part of the Saturn Junkyard again when it kind of relaunched. Can you fill us in on that?
Sure, my pleasure. So back when I first appeared in a podcast, it was actually just me and Sam, He was basically interviewing me, kind of trying to figure out where I fit into the whole Saturn Junkyard and what was my history with the Saturn Junkyard. And later I realized that back then I was speaking from memory and I got a lot of things wrong. It's kind of thing that makes you question history, because if something that happened only a few years ago, back then it was kind of 10 years earlier, 10 years previously, and I was already getting things wrong from memory. Imagine what stuff in history historians get wrong because the sources just couldn't trust their memories. So I actually went back and read in preparation for this podcast. I went back and read the first few posts of the Saturn Junkyard and kind of tried to refresh my memory. And I basically I reached the Saturn Junkyard. It all started with Dreamcast Junkyard, as you said. I was already a reader of the Dreamcast Junkyard. Don't know how I found it. I just remember that back then. Nowadays you have so many projects about retro games. You have so many YouTube channels, so many podcasts, so many websites. But back then I think it was kind of still a new thing. So to find a blog about an old console, it wasn't that old back then, but a console that wasn't modern anymore. It was kind of a rare thing, and I really liked Tom's style, and I also liked the kind of the little community that formed in the comment section. So there were clearly regular readers that were also regular commenters, and we would kind of comment each other's comments. So it wasn't a forum or something like that, but there was some interaction in the comment section. And I was an avid reader of Dreamcast Junkyard. And I remember when you first founded the Saturn Junkyard, and I already recognized your name from the comment section. Don't know if we ever interacted there, if I ever replied to you or something, but I clearly recognize your name as a regular reader of the Dreamcast Junkyard. So when you kind of announced that you were going to start the Saturn Junkyard, the Saturn being a very special console to me, it was a no-brainer. Of course, I was going to start reading the Saturn Junkyard. And a couple of things that I got wrong back in my first podcast, when I described and recalled how I first got involved with the Saturn Junkyard. First of all, I wasn't the first writer to join you. It was actually Caleb. You can check this out. You can check this out in the... What, Simon? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, Caleb Moshier, that's my American friend I was saying, and he's still on the internet and he's still active at the moment, but I'll talk about that later. Sorry, thank you.
So yeah, he was the one to join you, so it wasn't me. I think I was the fourth or fifth writer to join the Saturn Junkyard. You got a lot of extra writers real quick. Which is great. It goes to show how the community was back then. And I didn't ask you to join the Junkyard. What I did was I wrote an article and I submitted it to you to post it on Saturn Junkyard. And it wasn't supposed to... At the time, I didn't have like this idea of becoming a regular contributor. It was... That's why I didn't explicitly ask you to make me a contributor to the Saturn Junkyard. It was just like a one-off thing, or at least an occasional thing. But you went ahead and you basically said, okay, this is great. Do you want to do more of this? Do you want to write more articles for the blog? And I just couldn't say no. I mean, it was also... it was a perfect storm. It was a convergence of factors in my life at the time. As you said, I was a teenager. I was around 16 years old, and or 17 actually. I had just gotten out of a project in Portuguese website that I was writing articles for about video games that went under. It was actually a commercial website, like a professional website, but it went under. So I lost that avenue for writing. I was also going back into Saturn. I had gotten my second Saturn after selling the original one I had as a kid. So I was exploring all of the games that I missed. I also wanted to practice my English, and it was just a lot of things that came together, and the Saturn Junkyard was the perfect avenue for me at the time to talk about games, to talk with you guys, because it was more of a community. It wasn't really, even though it wasn't a forum or a Reddit or a Discord channel or all of these more like all of these platforms that you have today that are specifically made for interaction. It wasn't that. It was a blog where one person would write and other people would read, but there was still a community. There was still a community in comment sections, and even we would sometimes reference each other's, among the writing team, would reference each other's posts. So there was clearly a community there. Some of us also branched off into personal blogs, and we would catch up on each other on our personal projects. And it's the people. In the end, it's the people. It's also the content, obviously. You have to like what you're reading and be interested in that. But definitely what made the Saturn Junkyard what it was back then, and I think what it still makes the Saturn Junkyard what it is today, it's the content, but it's above that. I think it's the people. It's the community. It's the people that come together because of this project. And back then there was a lot of people, a lot of writers that joined. Some would barely write at all. Others would be regulars. Others would kind of go into bursts, write a lot of articles at one point, and then kind of stop doing that. So it was obviously like a pastime for us, a hobby. So it's not like anyone was expected to write continuously or anything like that. It was just something that we all did for fun, and it was it was very special. And I just want to, if you'll allow me, I just want to read something real quick. It's the very first post that Simon wrote for the Saturn Junkyard, and it goes like this. I'm just going to read a few sentences. Inspired by the great Tom Lee's Dreamcast Junkyard, I have decided to construct a brand new site dedicated to my favorite console of all time. Whilst not the best console in the history of gaming, it is certainly the one I spent my happiest gaming times. This is something of a work in progress, so I'll keep this short and sweet. Let's hope it eventually fulfills all our Saturn hopes and dreams.
I think I'm going to cry.
You wrote it, man.
I've just choked myself up. That was beautiful. Thank you, Nuno.
As Brian said, you wrote it, not me. I'm just reading it.
Yeah, but maybe it's the way you read it. I don't know. That's just completely hit me from the side. That's just, wow, amazing. So, if I can, I don't know how I will follow that. I'll try. So, if I can just follow that, what Nuno said was that the Saturn Junkyard has always been about the people. And I'm going to throw it open now to three more people who have made this community and project grow and grow and grow and made it so exciting for me with their input and their help. So I can't actually remember if it was Brian or Sam who first joined the team, apart from me and Nuno. So do either of you remember who came first?
I don't. I just remember, I think we all responded to John's post on the Dreamcast Junkyard Facebook group.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, cool. I didn't know there was a Saturn Junkyard. That sounds fun. And I think we all joined. And then John was just like, okay, you're admins now. I think we were chatting like for a couple of days, and then that was it was a surprise to me, and it was kind of funny. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'm part of this. Awesome, let's do some shit. And then Sam.
If I could
go ahead.
interrupt, actually, that was Simon who went round, and in fact, he made everyone an admin except me. He left me as a humble moderator.
That's
and
right.
And then I was like, Simon, why have you just left me as a moderator? He's like, oh, I didn't realise I'd made everybody else. And at one point, we had more admins than users.
I didn't know what. Yep. This is why. But yeah, Bri, carry you've
sorry, carry.
No, I was just going to say, as you've spoken first, Brian, tell us how your sort of time in the junkyard blossomed from your first initial finding out about the site to where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the long and the short of it. I mean, I feel like I was a lot more involved in the community early on as it was getting started. We had as you'd mentioned, John, we had a pretty big admin team at the time, or moderating team. And so there were conversations where we were just figuring out what are some things we can do to contribute to this thing. And one of the ideas that I believe Sam had gotten started was a podcast. And so you all were just like, hey, who's interested in doing this podcast thing? And I think that's where most of my early involvement started and continues. I mean, I think over time, as work has gotten busy and as other stuff is just, life has just kind of gotten in the way, I've had to focus my involvement to just be very specific on things that I, can avoid biting off more than I can chew. And so I think that kind of settled into just being more focused on the podcast at this point. I also just don't really use social media, or at least Facebook, very often anymore. So I'm not really involved in any capacity on that, other than to post occasional pics of my dog, which you might be hearing in the background. She's kind of barking and wanting to play, but we'll have to wait until after we're done recording. But yeah, anyway, that's just a rambly way to say I think it was just a piggybacked effort off of what you and Sam and John and all of you all were, and we're all kind of wanting to get the ball rolling on. So with that, yeah, Sam, how about you?
To be completely honest with you, the way that I found the Saturn Junkyard was, you have to kind of go back. It was 2017. It was early 2017, and Facebook groups had become a thing. And it probably been a thing long before that. And there was no one really to talk about retro gaming with. And I don't know why or how or what happened, but Facebook just popped up the Saturn Junkyard in front of me. And I think it was actually like their page, the Dreamcast Junkyard's page. It popped up and it was like, oh, we got a group, by the way. So I said, screw it. I joined it. Had 1,000 rules. One of the main rules I remember was we do not talk about the Dreamcast 2 or some crap like that. It was some recurring thing. I don't know. But, so I joined up and didn't really talk a whole lot because, to be honest with you, most everybody was just saying what they'd picked up, what they bought, and I never really cared about that. I wanted to hear about what people were, their memories or what they were playing, stuff like that. I didn't care what you bought. And for some reason or another, somebody started talking about the Saturn. And I was like, holy shit, because the Saturn is my console. It is the reason I am a gamer today, plain and simple. And whenever they started talking about a group, I was like, hell yeah. So I was first up. I was like, let's get it. And I think I was in the first 12, or there was like 10 or 12 of us. Whenever I joined, there was like 10 or 12 members, if I remember correctly. There was not even 20 people. In fact, I remember for the longest time me and I think it was Gaz were going back and forth on what day we would actually hit, however many 100 or 1,000 members or whatever. And I actually beat them. I remember that part. But
I think the number was 500, Sam.
It might have been. I was trying to go back through the junkyard posts, but Facebook's completely weird. I have basically walked away from social media in a lot of regards, especially Facebook. Not the Saturn Junkyard by any measure, but my experiences from 2017 versus today, social media wise, I've had to walk away from it the internet has become extremely toxic in the last couple of years. That's one thing I'm glad to see the Saturn Junkyard never got to. Those early days were awesome because it was just a couple of us. We were rambling with each other. We were talking. We were telling, stories about what we had. In fact, I remember the whole reason I think I don't understand why John gave me admin status, because me and him were going back and forth about bootlegs, reproductions, whatever you want to call it, burned games. That's what we were going on about. And I am one of these people that has been always and forever, if you ain't got the money, just pirate the shit. I don't care. Go play the damn games. And me and John were going back and forth about this. And we were kind of being pokey at each other, and somehow or another, Sweet Tea got involved. It was stupid. The amount of stupidity that was going on in these comment threads in the early days of the Junkyard was just amazing. It wasn't even about the Saturn by itself. It was a community of guys who had a common interest that were just shooting the shit with each other from all across the globe. In fact, there was a while there it was a British group or a European group, and then all of a sudden the Americans took over. It was funny as hell. But it was cool back then. And whenever it comes to the actual Junkyard, I remember, like Brian was talking about, I don't know what it was, but I was like, man, if we're going to do something, let's just do something simple. We all got mics. Let's talk. I didn't even think podcast, but I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. And I had written an article for the Junkyard and gave it over to Simon to put up. And it was, I can't even remember now. It was something about like opening up your Saturn. And it was talking about like broadening your scope, with mod chips, and at the time pseudo Saturn. That was basically it. And we had, I think, I want to say Fenrir wasn't around, but like Phoebe and all that. The first couple of ODEs, I think they had just come out, they were just come out or in the process. I can't remember, but there was a lot of people even back then who were just limited by the amount of money it would cost to play these games. And the Saturn has an excellent library if you can actually get the games that are worth playing. The problem is that the ones that are worth playing, most people buy, and by that point, back then, Panzer Dragoon Saga was like $400 a drop. The game, just one game was $400 in 2017. Now it's ridiculous. That and Magic Knight Raid Earth.
Can you imagine only paying $400 for it now?
I know, right? But I mean, like, that's the point. I was all about people playing games and us getting together and talking about stuff. I'd had previous experience with YouTube, and I like whenever John and Simon and them were talking about creating something. I think originally the idea was just to create something for the sake of community. It wasn't really like, that's really all it was. And that's kind of what I've held on to ever since with the Junkyard in my mind, is that it's always been about community. It's always been about trying to help other people. It's always been about trying to share something of importance, because that's what I remember fondly of the early days of the Junkyard. And I mean, it still happens. I don't get to frequent the site as much or the Facebook group as much. Nuno does an awesome job with continuing to put out content regardless of how frequent it is. I mean, I have no room to talk. My content, it's been like 9 months since I created anything. And for anybody listening who's a fan of my crap, you have the Saturn Junkyard and Simon and John and Brian and Nuno and Cameron and all these other guys to thank for it, because if it hadn't been for the Saturn Junkyard and Titancast, I would have never branched out and made my own crap. So I think it's not just about my personal experience. I think the Junkyard was especially the early days, it was a moment in time where you had all these people who would have never met otherwise, who got to come together, who got to talk to each other, and got to share a commonality that, just, it didn't matter where we were from, what language we spoke, nothing. I mean, we had a common purpose, and we enjoyed the hell out of it. And I think what we have today, not just us, but groups like Sega Saturn Shiro, I'm sure there's countless other groups, and I mean, the amount of Saturn content on YouTube alone now is insane compared to back then. I mean, I think in no small part, we have had some impact on that. And I think if nothing else, I mean, it's a legacy of the Saturn, and I don't know. It's cool as hell. I've enjoyed the hell. I've enjoyed the ride, and I'm happy to be back on Titancast, your home for Sega Saturn news, commentary, personal stories, and more. So yeah, that's all I got.
God, I've been waiting to hear that for so long. Can you somehow add it up onto the front, Brian? That was amazing. Sam, thank you. And you know what? Again, thank you. I feel like I'm welling up again. This is amazing to hear what people are saying and how it's impacted them. Cam, you've got a lot to follow. Cam, can you tell me how the Saturn Junkyard has impacted on your life? And no, can you please tell me how you came to be part of the Junkyard crew, please?
Okay, I hope this does as much emotional impact as everyone else's, or at least comes close. I had just been through some stuff in my life, like I guess, like John had said, dealing with emotions and dealing with your place in life. And I didn't feel like I had much going on, so I had been invested into like the Wii U as a console, and that was kind of what I was doing before I joined the Junkyard. And then that's when they discontinued the Wii U and they brought out the Switch, and I was looking at the price of the Switch compared to the Wii U, and it was more expensive. And they're like, well, this is how much this is, and this is how much that was. And I was like, well, if that's how much like that stuff is, like, how much is it to buy like a Dreamcast or a Saturn or something like that, something I'd rather be playing. I don't want something new anymore. I'm done. If you're not going to give me a Wii U, I want, Dreamcast or Saturn. So I went online, and they were about the same price. Everything at that time seemed about the same price for, say, like the Dreamcast. You could get a new Dreamcast for $399, or you could get a Switch for $399. You could get a Dreamcast controller for $99 or a Switch controller for $99. And I was like, well, if I'm going to get into Dreamcast, maybe there's one of those Facebook groups. And that's how I found the Dreamcast Junkyard. And then one day I was like, well, if they have a Dreamcast Junkyard, I'm sure they have to have a Saturn Junkyard. And I guess by fluke, you guys had just like kind of started reopening and doing things, because I had just got back from a trip from Alberta, and I had been in a retro game store. And at that time, the in Alberta was asking $1,000 Canadian for Panzer Dragoon Saga. And I was like, no. Right? So I was like, no, this is it. I'm doing Saturn. I'm going all in. This is what we're doing. And I sold about half my gaming collection. I had 13 kills and a bunch of stuff, and I was like, no, this is what I need to do Saturn. And if I'm going to do Saturn, I'm going to get like the specific games that, like, Sam's like, these are the best games, but you're going to have to pay. And like he said, even back then, you're like $400 for Panzer Dragoon Saga. When I finally got it, it was so much for this game or that game. And at the time, I'm like, well, these are terrible prices, and I definitely didn't get a bargain. But, nowadays, you're like, I would kill for those prices, But for the Junkyard itself, like, I joined as just like a member to be part of a community with people who wanted to talk about the console that I had decided was my daily driver. Simon had written an article in 2017 called "Does the Saturn Cut It in 2017?" And that article has stuck with me for the last 5 years, 4 or 5 years or whatever, since we've been doing the whole Junkyard thing. Because it's like, is this a modern console? Can you play this exclusively and still enjoy gaming? Can you start never playing Saturn today and just dive into a community and experience it like it was a brand new console, or like it was 1998 again? And I'm here to tell you that, yes, it cuts it in 2017. It cut it in like 96, and it's still cutting it today in 2021. And the community is part of that reason. If I'm beating a game and I'm stuck, I can either go to the community and see what other people did. I can go to the community and be like, yo, I just got this game. I'm super excited about it. And people are like, oh, I've played that game, or I'm playing that game. And there was like the spring that we all played Sonic R. I know John does not feel the sunshine as often as he should. But there was an entire spring where everyone was just playing Sonic R, and Brian made a big video about the best lines to take, and it just became this community, just people challenging other people to other things, and it was like being in school all over again, being on the playground, talking to all your friends about your favorite video game console, and it was super nostalgic, and it was I could, if I woke up in the middle of the night having an anxiety attack, I could turn to the junkyard and distract myself from that and talk to people just about Saturn. And that's how I got to know John and Simon, because of the time changes. And, you know, it gave me a focus in life, was to focus on the Saturn and games that I thought that I had missed at the time, and I thought that I had missed out on, but I wasn't missing out. You know, this is the time, this was the community, these were the friends that I was making, and those experiences that I could have that I didn't get to have really as a teenager or as a kid because of the times. So it fulfilled so much, like, and it's given me friends and memories that I'll take with me, like, for the rest of my life, right? Part of it was I wanted to write articles for Simon for the Junkyard about, you know, stuff like this, about making friends along the way and stuff that I was experiencing. And part of the things that kind of made me get in the way was my own anxiety that it wouldn't be received or something like that, which is ridiculous, because anything that anybody creates in this community, I've never seen turned down or anything. Like when Nick Bond did his top Saturn games and he wanted to tell everyone what his Saturn awards were, everybody was basically like, bravo. Or when Sam did the Sega Saturn Gentleman thing, like the Southern Sega Gentleman on his own, everyone was like, bravo. You know, if David Lee like puts out a new like piece of art, bravo. Ben Boyd, bravo. It doesn't matter who you are. You put out an article or a video or anything, the community's championing you behind you, being like, we've got you, like the whole way. And it's so infectious. You know, you just want to stay longer and hang out more.
Wow.
And, you know, that's kind of how I got here.
Well, you managed to again make me feel emotional, because we'll go back around in a circle here. This has meant an awful lot to me. Just not just the Saturn Junkyard, but the whole community. It's reignited something for me. I found out in 2017 that I knew nothing about the Saturn, that I had experienced like a fraction, the tiniest percentage of its content and its magic. And the community's opened up the console for me. I have to say, guys, that like you, Brian and Sam, I'm withdrawing a little bit from social media, because I think with its algorithms and stuff, it sends me stuff that I just don't need to hear. A lot of the time it is becoming toxic and it is becoming polarized. But the one place that I have vowed, even if I withdrew from Facebook completely as Simon Early, I would never withdraw from the Saturn Junkyard, because it always seems to have remained a place, a positive place, where there is none of that polarity and there is none of that snarkiness or point scoring or any of that business, you know. So yeah, if I do go off Facebook personally, I'll always still be on the Saturn Junkyard as a group, and I'll always hopefully be involved in these podcasts and going forward with the other parts of the venture, in terms of the YouTube channel, and you know, still blogging and, you know, contributing to us as an organization. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here in this celebratory 15th anniversary thing. I'm going to get to our goodbyes, I think, in a moment. I just want to make a little announcement, which is about our 15th anniversary competition. Now, we have a competition at the Saturn Junkyard. On the Facebook page, you can find the details for that. But we're basically offering a Sega Saturn console for somebody to win, along with other prizes, including a wireless remote control and some exclusive Ben Boyd artwork. They are the first three prizes that I can tell you we're going to be awarding. We're looking for contributions. We want the yard to keep going, and we want people to contribute either articles, which will be read, maybe posted on the Saturn Junkyard blog. We want videos. If anyone wants to make a video about the Sega Saturn, about its games, or about the community, or about the console itself. If anyone wants to do some photography or artwork, a one-off piece that they could display, anything, it could be a rap, a poem, a song, any piece of art or art or documentary sort of article, anything you want, but just about the Sega Saturn. What makes it unique? What makes this community unique? We have our entry details are on the Saturn Junkyard Facebook page. We have an email address which people can submit their entries to. In obviously, if they're videos or whatever, artwork or whatever, you can just email it as a file to this email address. The details of that are on our Facebook page. But we have more prizes which will come. We're hoping that there'll be a good few entries. There's a 2-month time period between the 6th of December, when we first announced the competition. The last entry point for that is going to be February the 6th, and we'll get to the judging and awarding of prizes after that. But there are some lovely things to be won. The 3 things I mentioned are only the first 3 things. Other people have pledged other things which we'll be announcing through the month of December and beyond. So yeah, we hope people will get creative and make something that they can put in for the competition, and we'd be very happy to give a Saturn to the person who impresses us the most. Okay, so I'm going to go around the circle again, as I did at the start when I introduced everyone, and people can say their goodbyes. First of all, can I just say thank you to John for joining us for the first time? John, do you want to say goodbye to the people?
No.
Not allowed.
No, there was just a few things that I just wanted to clarify. So I've never had a problem with people having ROMs and rips and stuff like that. That's why I got an admin in the Dreamcast Junkyard, is because of my involvement in the Dreamcast scene in the early 2000s. I have a massive collection of images and backup software and stuff, though I don't have a problem with that. I just object to people paying for stuff that I've been involved in the past. But that's my personal opinion. I don't have any other issue with it. Other than that, you're all wonderful, beautiful people, and I wish us all a long life of laughter, love and happiness, many more years of Saturn Junkyard. Oh, and Simon, I promised you a load of disc-only games and a joystick I'm going to throw in for you as well.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much for that, John, and thank you for joining us this evening and for your long-term support and for your friendship. Much appreciated. Brian, thank you very much for joining us. Where can we find you at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think my main contribution to the Junkyard is this very podcast, so you can find me here. I don't know if you can hear my dog, but you can find her behind me barking in frustration. We'll play in a second, I promise, Shio. And then what else am I doing? I have a personal blog. I haven't really updated it in a while, but the Virtua Planet. I just write basically about mostly non-Sega stuff there, and then every now and then I'll have something on the Dreamcast Junkyard or Saturn Junkyard blogs. And then I'm also doing a couple of podcast stuff with the Dreamcast Junkyard as well. So yeah, just doing what I can.
Okay, thank you very much for that, sir. Cameron, where can we find you?
You can find me anywhere on the internet at Sundain, TSUNDAIN. I say I spend most of my time on the Saturn Junkyard if I am on the internet, because I read like 98% of everything that's posted on that Facebook page.
Okay, cool. Nuno, where can we find you? And more importantly, where can we find your work?
Yes, that's is the best way to put it, because I don't do social media, I don't do blogs, I don't do any of that. You can always find my work at the Saturn Junkyard YouTube channel. And I just want to take the opportunity to give two very quick shout outs. The first one to John, who is here, who's been a long time supporter of the Saturn Junkyard. And it was great having you on the podcast. You should probably come on more often.
Thank you, my brother. Yes, I will.
Yeah, you're an awesome guy. You've been with us from the very beginning. Also, the resurrection of the Saturn Junkyard. The whole reason we are now here recording this podcast was in big part because of you. And yeah, you're an awesome dude, and I'm really glad you're still with us after all these years. And I also want to give a quick shout out to an old member from the back in the day who went by the alias Gnome. He became a writer for the old blog, and also had his own blog. And he's a guy that I always got along great with, and he's also made quite a name for himself in terms of the video game industry. His real name is Konstantinos Dimopoulos. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He's Greek. And he's an architect and urban planner. He became a consultant, a freelancer consultant for video games in terms of the layout of cities in games. He worked with many companies.
Sorry, I think I have one of his books, Virtual Cities. Is that
exactly? I was going to get to that.
Fucking awesome book. Yeah, I just bought it like last month.
Yeah, he released a book called precisely Virtual Cities, which is about that. He's all about the layout, the structure, and the design of virtual cities in video games. So yeah, he released that book, and he's, as I mentioned, he's a freelancer consultant. So yeah, I just wanted to give him a huge shout out. And yeah, the Saturn Junkyard was the breeding ground for lots of great minds. And he's just one of those.
You know what, Nuno, that's mind blowing, because Gnome was such an absolutely lovely guy. He had a blog called Gnome's Lair.
Exactly.
And then he also did Gnome's Gaming on the Go, and that was me and him doing phone games, GBA and DS, I think. Anyway, yeah, amazing guy, lovely, generous, lovely guy. There was him and the Elderly Gamer. I don't know if you remember him as well.
Yeah, he was amazing as well. Great guy.
Wow, crazy, lovely. Shout out to both of them, Konstantinos, man, the Gnome. Wow, God, I'm getting all emotional again. That was 2006, folks. Sam, I would also like to say thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us tonight. Where can we find you at the moment?
Well, as always, it's been very much a pleasure, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to actually be here. As well as many people have already said before, thank you very much for allowing this to be in existence 15 years later. That's pretty freaking cool, man. But yeah, you can always find me over at my YouTube channel when and if and whenever the stars align and the moon's in the proper position. Hopefully, things will occur. I'm sorry, folks. For those of y'all who enjoy my content, apologies. My line of work is basically like this: if I'm working, I'm not home, and if I'm home, I'm not working. So that's just how that works. But you can find me over there, of course. I'm pretty active on Twitter. I have pretty much gotten off of Facebook entirely. Easiest way to find me is to type in the Southern Sega Gentleman, and you will find me. That easy. Other than that, y'all have a good one. That's all I got.
Just to follow up with a few last minute shout outs to everybody that makes the junkyard and the community, really just drives the engine of all of it. I'd first like to give a shout out to Jeff Bradford, who is our driving force on the blog right now. So huge kudos to all of his great and entertaining and fun pieces that he contributes to the blog. Also, just to the Facebook group admin staff themselves. I mean, we got so many great people that make this community, as you all have been kind of alluding to throughout this episode, that just really keep that thing as awesome as it is. So yeah, Jared Callister, Roberto Cristino, I guess us, maybe not us so much. You, Simon, for sure, and you, John, for sure, and you, Cameron, maybe not me. Andy Saxon, Daniel Turner. I mean, come on, that guy is a legend.
Daniel Turner. Shout going out to Daniel Turner. He is an absolute legend.
Yeah, and some of our past. Oh yeah, go ahead.
We have to shout out Alex Lang. Alex has to get a shout
hell
out.
Yeah. Alex,
for just starting almost in any and every trouble in the junkyard. If there's a heated debate, Alex is probably at the center of it.
Yeah, respect to Alex as well.
Yeah, so shout out to everybody and some of the admins who've been part of us, part of our staff over time, but may not be now. I mean, Natalie and Morgan and all of them. Yeah, and of course, Gaz Cormac. I think we already kind of shouted him out earlier, but man, he's an awesome dude. So yeah, huge props to everybody.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I didn't mention those people. I was overcome with emotion. It's like an awards ceremony. You got to make sure you thank everyone before you leave the stage, and thank you to Brian for doing that. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much, everyone. We're going to wrap up this 15th anniversary Titancast dedicated to the Saturn Junkyard. The 15th anniversary Saturn Junkyard Titancast. There you go. Managed to get it out in the end. Thank you very much to everyone, and thank you for letting me be the host for once. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've had an absolutely brilliant time. This, I think, is the podcast I've probably enjoyed the most of all the ones that we've ever done, because it was such a lovely thing to hear about how everyone's feeling. On that lovely note and on that bombshell, I'm going to disappear. We're all going to disappear. Say thank you to everyone out there for listening to us, and we hope to continue for the foreseeable future and for the years to come. Thank you. Over and out.